Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Wade, the VP of Marketing at Robotics, part of the Zappi group of companies, and welcome to Mobile Robotics 2026. So firstly, thank you for joining us. Before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping about today's session. Firstly, just to know, this session will take the form of an in-depth conversation about mobile robotics, rather than a PowerPoint presentation. So just so you're not surprised by the format once we get going. Like this, we think we can squeeze the most possible insights and knowledge out of our expert speaker. This chat is being recorded and will be available to watch on demand after the event. And most importantly, if you have any questions during the session, you can pop these in the Q&A section, which should be on the right of your screen. And we do encourage that. We would like this to be as useful and as interactive as possible. Lastly, this session is planned to run maximum 1 hour. We hope to include up to 15 minutes of Q&A there at the end. So as I say, do pop your questions in there and we'll try to cover as many as we can. So with that, I would like to introduce our speaker, Javier Miguélez, who is a Spanish industrial engineer and an international expert in mobile robotics. Javier has basically worked on hundreds of AGV and AMR projects across 15 countries. And a little bit of background, after first holding several senior business development roles in the sector, he co-founded Moving Robots. Now, this is a vendor-agnostic consultancy where he works as an independent consultant doing two things mainly. So helping companies define their automation strategies and also working with mobile robot makers to help them go to market and grow. Javier is a regular speaker at industry events, and he's also the president of the Spanish Mobile Robotics Association called ARME. So, Javier, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Matt, for inviting me to this discussion. Looking forward.
Me too. It's going to be interesting, I reckon. So let's kick off. Let's kick off like fairly zoomed out at a high level, and let's start with the industry itself and where we are with the mobile robotics industry today. We see certainly at trade shows, events, reading reports about the industries that mobile robotics today in 2026 seems to be in kind of pretty heavy flux, really. It's a very changeable time. We see OEMs being bought, losing money, some going bankrupt. So I guess what I thought might be a good starting point is to understand, why do you think that is? Like, why do we see producers struggling, and what's going on in this environment?
Well, we are starting with the hard question. Why are the producers struggling to earn money? I would say that mobile robotics projects, in many cases, are not easy, and for several reasons. So many producers are finding surprises in projects, and these surprises cost money, directly straight to the point. Why do they not detect those problems in the projects in advance? That's also a good question. I think the main reason is the lack of knowledge and the lack of experience, both of them.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
they don't have knowledge and experience from many years, so that they can figure out what projects are going to be the good ones for them and what projects are not going to be the good ones for them.
Do you think that perception that mobile robot projects are fairly easy, is that a problem both with the robot makers and the end customers?
Sure. Problems come, let's say, from both sides. It's a joint responsibility, I would say.
Gotcha. So there's an educational gap in the market in that sense of what a robot project looks like and involves.
Let's say that from a maker or from an integrator perspective, let's say that in most of the cases they know what they are doing, but at some point an interesting project arrives, a project that they have never done before in the past, so you never know what's going to happen. That comes from the producer or from the integrator side, and from the customer point of view, it's like they don't have the knowledge, they don't have experience, and they don't know exactly how a mobile robot works or how a mobile robotics project looks like. So actually, many end users think that a mobile robot works like the typical, the usual robotic arm, and it's never that way. It's not at all similar. So yeah, I think those are the two things from.
I see.
Yeah.
And on that point, the difference between, let's say, static automation like industrial robotic arms and mobile robots, if you had to narrow that down to the one key difference that the end user really needs to appreciate and think deeply about, aside from one moves and the other doesn't, I get that, but like what, the
For sure.
impact of that?
The impact of that, let's say that the things that can go wrong in a mobile robotics project are many more than the things that can go wrong in a bolted robot arm or robotic arm. For example, the throughput is very easy from an arm perspective. Yes, are picking a number of I don't know, boxes per hour. But when it comes to a mobile robot, most probably you have more than one mobile robot, and you have traffic. And you have to manage that traffic. So that is something that wouldn't exist in case of a fixed robot. Just as an example, another one maybe, and it's very common, the people working around and crossing, and the different flows coming and going, the manual forklift appearing where it shouldn't be, so on. That's something that with a fixed and vaulted robot you don't face.
I see. Yep. Okay.
But there are many things involved.
Yeah.
It's not just the robot itself, as it would be with a robot arm. Yeah.
And if you're an end customer who's thinking about automating your kind of internal logistics and your transport processes, what would you recommend they look for or ask of suppliers to try and reduce that supplier risk and make sure their supplier isn't one of the ones that disappears in a year?
I always say that before talking to any supplier, you have to be sure about what you want. Many companies reach us and they say, I want to automate. And the first question from my side is, okay, what for? And they don't know what for. So actually, many are interested because, everybody has, or everybody's talking about AGVs, AMRs, but they don't know what for exactly. So you may need, or you would like to install mobile robots because you are facing human resources problems or labor shortages, or so you need to know what for. And that's the first thing. And the second thing is that maybe they want to automate some processes, but they are not ready. So you have to issue what for, and then you have to be ready. And I always say that you never automate waste. So you have to be efficient, and then you have to automate. If you're not efficient, don't think about automation. And the third thing would be that you need to make a good design and to know exactly what you want before reaching any vendor. If you reach a vendor without knowing what you want, without having a strategy, and without being efficient, you are throwing the money out of the window.
Sure.
And those would be the three things for me.
And maybe most interesting to focus on being efficient, right? So let's say you're running, I don't know, a warehouse production plant today. You have so many people, workers with pallet jacks or driving forklifts. What the transition from that to being ready for automation and being what you would call efficient, what's involved in that? Well, how do you define, okay, that they're ready for that automation step?
There's always a question that I use. Okay, how many pallets do you move per hour? And the usual question is, I don't know. I have 3 drivers. And how do you know you need 3 drivers or 2 drivers or 4 drivers? You're not measuring anything at all. That's the starting point. So if you don't know what you're moving and how many times per hour you're moving that, you're not efficient. Because, you cannot improve what you cannot measure.
Gotcha. Yep. Yeah, that certainly chimes with our experience working with.
For example, if you have a WMS, you know if you're efficient or if you're not. But if you don't even have a WMS, it's like crazy. I mean, you need a WMS, first install it, and then we'll see.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that makes sense. What we see, obviously, we met at Logimat. There are lots of kind of events where we see the industry in a snapshot. If we think about Logimat, Modex, Promat, certainly the last 2 or 3 years, from a supplier point of view, we see more and more Chinese AGV, AMR brands coming in. I'm curious, in your view, like, how do you see their position in the market, both in terms of the companies, but also in terms of the products, the performance, and their capabilities? And do you see them, in the future, being a large part of Western European, North American markets? How do you view that arrival?
So for me, there are three things when you start talking with a vendor. The first thing is the availability. How sturdy are your mobile vaults? So you need to have, as a vendor, you need to have very good mobile vaults. So mobile vaults producing no problems at all to the end user. This is the first thing, the availability of a mobile vault. The second thing is the service that you can provide for that mobile vault, and the third thing is the stability of the company, a bit of the vendor. Because as you were mentioning before, this market is a bit crazy, and we see many companies coming and going, and lots of M&A. So it's quite unstable. So maybe you buy one AGV from a company today, and 1 year after, that company has disappeared. That's very common. So for me, these are the three winning factors. So when you have a look at the availability, you can have vendors with very good availability, both in Asia and in the European countries or in the United States. That's something that you can find in many different places. When it comes to the service, no, this makes a completely different thing. Why? Because the Chinese companies, when it comes to the service in Europe, they are not well established yet. But if you compare, I don't know, a Chinese vendor with, I don't know, one of the forklift big four, I'm talking about Toyota Material Handling, John Heinrich, Linde, Steel. Those companies have been creating the service network for 30, 40 years. So it's going to be very difficult for the Chinese importers or for the Chinese companies to come here and create this service network from scratch, even if they partner. So it's going to take them years. So I guess that from this service point of view, the European companies are winning, for sure, or the local companies are winning. And when it comes to stability, again, I think that the European companies are winning. Why? Because Chinese, you don't know if they are coming or going or what's going to happen with them in the future. Sometimes they come and stay for 4 years, but then that company disappears, or they are no longer interested in the European market and they are more interested in, I don't know, in Southeast Asia or whatever. So for me, when it comes to availability of the machine itself, I think that no matter if we are talking about European or American or Chinese or Asian companies, I mean, you can find good products all around. When it comes to the service and the stability of companies, for sure, European companies are winning in Europe, for sure.
Right. An interesting observation we had is that we go to the shows and we see lots of Chinese vendors arriving on the market, but by contrast, in North America, in at least our perception of Robotics is that there's actually quite a small number of North American AGV brands, AMR brands. I wonder if what's your kind of thought of why that is?
The first thing that comes to my mind is that automation in Europe is quite more advanced than in the United States. So that could be the first reason. And the second reason would be that politics. When it comes to the United States, for example, a company like HIK, HAIK, they are banned in the United States. So some of them are banned in the United States. They cannot sell. But they can sell in Europe. Nobody knows what's going to happen with Europe and the Chinese companies in the future. But for sure, I think the two main factors are these ones. So first, that the automated business is less developed in the United States, though it has a great potential. And second, that some companies are banned, and that impacts for sure.
I see. And as you're speaking there, I'm thinking about just the previous question on China, and would it be fair to summarize your feedback there as for end customers, they should try to think beyond just price? Because certainly what we see is that the Chinese robots are coming in at however much percentage less, but then it's what happens after that.
Exactly. Actually, as you have seen, I have not talked about price at all, because before price comes the availability of the product. Because if the product has, I don't know, an 80% availability, forget about it. It's going to be stopped all the time. So forget about it. If you don't have good service, forget about it, because at some point the mobile robot is going to stop, even if it has a good availability, and it's going to be there for, I don't know, 1 week. So that doesn't work. And the third one, the stability, because the stability is then linked to the service. A company that disappears no longer is going to give you service. So these three things come always before price. Always.
I see. Yep, that's fair.
Again, end users don't know this.
Yeah.
They don't know this, and they buy. Chinese are like cheap and so on.
So if that's industry-wide, that's high level. Let's kind of bring it down to more project level, more installations. And in our discussion, so preparing for this session, you mentioned something that almost made my brain capsize, which is this statistic that, in your experience, 1 in 3 AMR projects fail, which is quite an astoundingly large number. Quite an amazing stat. So I wonder if you could kind of go a bit deeper on this and explain, okay, where does this stat come from? But in your view, what are the key reasons for this failure, and kind of whose fault is that?
So these are numbers that we have developed on our own for the last 3 years. Why? Again, lack of experience and lack of knowledge, mainly coming from the customer, but not only. In some cases, coming from the vendor as well. First thing is the lack of design, and the lack of knowing what for that I was mentioning before. You don't know what for you need or you want automation. So that would be the first thing. And you need to make good design, and design is linked to what you want, what you need. It's not linked to what the vendor wants. So I have been working for a vendor for many years, and you always were pushing for your solution, not what, in many cases, not what the customer needed, but what you could do, but what you could sell.
Mm-hmm.
That's happening constantly. So for me, this is the first reason, and the second and third reason are linked to these factors that I was mentioning before: lack of availability, lack of service, and company instability. So if your vendor disappears after 3 years, I mean, that project is no longer going to work, and that happens. And if you buy an AEV with a very low availability under 98% or 97%, I mean, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And then, as I was saying before, many vendors don't know exactly how to design a project when it comes out of the usual thing. So if they are focusing in a very particular application, I don't know, if we are talking about automotive industry, I don't know, the supply from the supermarket to the main assembly line. Okay, maybe they have been doing this for many years and they know how this works, but then they start working for I don't know, a body project, supplying sheets from the warehouse to the main assembly line, and this is or to an assembly line, whatever. And this application is completely different. So jumping from one application to a different application, this may seem easy, or it may seem that they are really similar, and then they are not.
I see. And as an end user, if you're automation ready by the definition we talked about earlier, and you're speaking to suppliers, how can you really have a feeling for that supplier? Okay, that supplier really gets my process, my use case, or versus they just sound like they do and they'll say whatever just to get their product in there. How can I judge that?
Okay, I would start with the 3 questions: availability, service, and company stability. And then what I always recommend is to visit something similar. So if you think you can do it, or if you're telling me that you can do it, that there's no problem, then let's visit a similar project. And that's usually wide open. So
Yeah,
open, yeah, absolutely.
gotcha.
And if that vendor or provider or whatever says no, that's going to be difficult, then don't buy it. Then don't buy it.
Yeah, simple as
Because
that.
if you cannot see it, I mean, I wouldn't do it.
In you mentioned this briefly before, but also in your latest blog post, which I recommend everyone to read. It's great, called Logistics Automation in 2026. You mentioned in there that service is truly the key to long-term project success. Could you give us a bit more detail on that? For a mobile robot project, service encompasses what, and also who's providing that? Is that the robot maker, a third-party integrator? What should that look like, do you think?
Okay, so when we're talking about service, first we're talking about maintenance of the hardware and maintenance of the software, both of them. The maintenance of the hardware is typically provided by a local service company. It could be integrator or not. And the software maintenance usually is performed either by this integrator or, in some cases, by the manufacturer, by the producer. It depends. But this is only a part of the thing inside the service. And when we're talking about maintenance, we're talking about preventive and corrective. The preventive is something that you can schedule and so on. That's okay. But the corrective maintenance is something that you cannot schedule at all. Why? Because the mobile robot is moving around your plant, and at some point, somebody, I don't know how, I don't know, but it happens. Somebody is gonna damage the AGV AMR in a certain way. There are many ways. So when that happens, you need that AGV to be fixed really fast. AGV AMR to be fixed really fast, and you need someone next to you, ideally. If it takes 1 week until that AGV starts working again, you're losing lots of money. And in so many cases, the project is no longer interesting. So that's the corrective maintenance. And so maintenance is the first part of the service, but then there is a second part, which is any modification you would like to perform. A modification can be a hardware modification, or not a hardware modification. It may be environment modification. For example, you need to change the route because this corridor is no longer available because I have changed and I have placed a new corridor or whatever, or I have changed the racks, or I have added a new station, or I have deleted some, or I want to move this station just to 20 centimeters to the left or to the right. So let's say that the brake is typically changing, not constantly, but very often. So you need someone to do that, because most probably you're not the expert one, and you don't want to do it because you're doing that once, twice a year, and your technician guys are, well, maybe they can manage for the simple things, but not for things like more complicated. So you need some support there. And when it comes to the software, same thing. Then suddenly you change your ERP and you have some updates, and you need to make some changes on the AEV side or the fleet manager side or whatever. So again, you need your vendor or your integrator or your provider. So for sure, for that, you need them as well. So when we're talking about the services, there's a maintenance part for sure, and then all these changes, which are not exactly maintenance, let's say.
Yeah.
Another thing, another option, I have changed the throughput and I need another mobile robot, another one. Okay, and suddenly my provider has disappeared and they cannot provide me another mobile robot. What am I gonna do? And that happens very often.
Right. Yeah, that is a fair question. You mentioned the AGV is getting damaged. I mean, what, like environmentally or in the work environment, what are the what are the most common factors that affect the maintenance or the long-term viability of the hardware itself? Is this about floor quality? Is it about forklift drivers accidentally banging into the
Forklift
AGVs?
drivers.
Okay.
Forklift drivers, Matt. Always forklift drivers. So people ask me, well, what's the problem? The AGV stops. So what's the problem? And say the problem is that the forklift driver doesn't stop. So people are always saying, but these forklift drivers, they are always driving so fast and so on. And maybe it's right, but in some cases, it's like, in your everyday life. So at some point, I don't know, you're thinking about, I want to buy a new car, and you're thinking about a car, and you forget about something, and suddenly you damage the AGV. So it's normal. It's usual. If it would be me, it would be the same thing.
Sure. It's a human factor.
Exactly. It's human thing. It's not like, okay, the forklift drivers are the devil or whatever. No, it's not that way. We are human, and that happens.
Yeah. It does bring up another interesting topic, though, which we've had various conversations about, which is obviously in most cases, a company is probably operating some, if not pump trucks, forklifts across the site. And then I guess that the most typical technological progression is then to slowly bring in some AGVs, AMRs, like you say, maybe because forklift drivers are very rare and hard to find. But then that obviously brings, you mentioned traffic before, that whole problem of mixed types of vehicles and how do we stop them crashing and stop them blocking and who has priority and so on. How should end customers, and vehicle makers themselves be thinking about integrating these different types of mixed fleets so that works in a seamless way?
Don't mix them. Never. Can they be mixed? It could be, but don't mix them. Don't mix them, particularly if it is the first project. Don't mix them. Later, after 10 years, maybe you can do some things, but at the beginning, forget about it. Don't do it. That's always my recommendation.
So is to widen that slightly then, let's stay on the idea of the first project. What's going to give you the best chance of success on a first project in terms of maybe not mixing them with forklifts, but is it about having a defined area or a particular kind of process? Like what's an easy and logical way in?
Isolated process. Isolated logistics process completely. It's hard to find. That's why that's the part of the design of the project. You have to design the project. The first project is the most important one. Because once that you have, 10 projects running, you have already been successful. But the first one, it has to be for sure successful. It's extremely important because otherwise you will not move forward with automation for many years. So it's very common. Okay, we made an AGV project 5 years ago. It was horrible, terrible, and we don't want to invest in AGVs, AMRs again. So after 10 years, they retry. But it takes 10 years to do it again. You know what I mean? So the first break is key. So I always recommend no, don't mix fleets. Don't mix auto and manual. Don't do it. That process has to be completely isolated. Then we will see.
I see. And I guess there's a kind of a business driver there as well in terms of the first project, right? People want to see a certain break-even ROI before they'll even consider the next project.
Well, that's with all projects.
Yeah,
that's with all projects. No, but the first one is really, really, really important. No, not for the AGV. The AGV, the AGV is going to go, the AMI is going to work, and that's all. But from a people mindset. So people have to get used to see the mobile robot running, and from an educational point of view and all that stuff. And for the company just to see that, okay, this technology works and this technology can help us. The first project is absolutely key. So don't do experiments or strange things. No. Isolated thing.
Gotcha. You mentioned like human acceptance. How much of an issue is that in projects, or particularly first projects? And what are the ways to kind of minimize any possible resentment of the robots?
It has a huge impact. So if you don't involve the users, the real users, not the plant manager, the real users from the beginning, most probably you will have an issue, because if they don't want to use the mobile robot, they will not use the mobile robot. So I would suggest to involve them at the beginning and to make them part of the project. Because sometimes when you don't know how a mobile robot works, you get in and just say, what's it doing? Really? Even it's moving in a strange way. So if you don't know how mobile robot works, you can think that. So if you have not involved the users since the beginning, if you have not trained them, that happens. And people start saying, no, this is something wrong. I don't like it. It's causing me more problems than solutions. I don't want it. So it's important that people want automation. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
I see.
From a user perspective, particularly.
And a silly side question, what we've seen from some end user projects, that the robots are given names or they're given googly eyes to humanize them, let's say. Is there some benefit to that?
Yeah, sure. That helps.
So we talk projects, we talk service. Let's kind of look ahead a little bit. Like if you think about where mobile robotics could be in 5 years, 10 years, if we start by talking about the producers themselves, those producers that are winning in 5, 10 years, that are leading the industry, what do you think, what will they have done right? Like, why will the leaders be the leaders?
Service. So again, the three things, right? So they have to they need to have very good AEVs or AMRs, very good mobile robots from an availability perspective. They have to provide very good service with a very good service availability. So this means that no problem, I will be fixing your damage or whatever you may have in less than 24 hours. And the third thing is that they have to be stable, because otherwise it's not going to work. So the company is doing these three things, will be winning the race.
Now, I'm conscious that in the future of electrification, a lot of our attendees who are watching live or watching the recordings are some level of vehicle maker themselves. So if we talk about that first point of the vehicle robustness, the performance, the reliability, the availability, like for those producers who maybe they do not have any automated models today, but they're thinking about moving into mobile robotics or creating automated versions, what are the key considerations they should be thinking about as to how can I, guarantee that my system is going to have a high availability?
I guess that this all starts with the kinematics. Kinematics are extremely important for the availability of any mobile robot. And I still see many mobile robots that from a kinematics point of view are not well designed. When you think about a vehicle, most people think it's just placing like 4 wheels or 6 wheels or whatever, and then we place something on top of that. It doesn't work that way. Never. And let's say that you may have as many wheels as you want, but the chassis has to be supported in 3 points. And you have to think about the stability triangle and so on. So all the kinematics model is extremely important, and people aren't paying attention to that. It's like, okay, this is a 4-wheel thing or 6-wheel thing, and it's gonna move. So everything starts with kinematics, and then for sure you have all the electronics, localization, and so on. You need to have good software, and good software means tested software. So when I reach a company and I ask, okay, how many mobile robots do you have in the market? And I say 50, and they have developed all the software on their own. It's like, that's not going to work. It's not that easy. If it would be that easy, robotics wouldn't exist. So exactly, So it's never that easy. So you need to have a very good hardware and sturdy hardware, starting with kinematics, and then the electronics as well. And then you need tested software. And once that you have the tested hardware and the tested software, you have to test that together for many hours. You have to test and test and test and test. and then test in real life environment, in industrial environment. So if you want to have a high availability, you need to test a lot, constantly.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Good
Do
hardware, good software, and testing. That would be for me.
do you see a difference between companies that go to market with a almost, let's say, a generic mobile robot? This can move pallets. We don't care in what kind of environment or industry it moves pallets, versus we're just doing, I don't know, stacking for food and beverage industry, and that's our super expertise. Do you see a difference in success there?
Totally, totally, absolutely. That's what I was mentioning before about the application. So, I mean, you may think that that from application B to application C changes nothing, but then it changes. And from one industry to another industry, things change a lot. So things are completely different in automotive industry and in beverage industry. Just a fast example. Okay, you're moving, I know, pallets, beer pallets. Suddenly you realize that a pallet full of beer is a pallet full of liquid, and the liquid impacts a lot the Wi-Fi coverage that you may have. And it's an easy thing. I mean, but happens, and you don't know why. And you see why I am not receiving any Wi-Fi coverage here. And it's because you're moving the pallet full of beer, and that suddenly changes, and you don't know what's the reason behind. So, and that's a simple example, but it happens with everything. So people focusing in one industry usually, or industry or application, those are winning guys. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay. And but just the part two of this question about looking ahead. I'm curious if we go a bit deeper to a kind of product feature level, aside from the, what we talked about, kinematics and using proven software and so on. If we talk about kind of functionality, use cases, do you, if I read a list for you, I'm curious if you think any of these will be big drivers of future growth. What we see the last couple of years, we see automated truck loading, picking automation, interoperability, companies standardizing on the fleet manager platform and then thinking vehicles afterwards, or something else. Do you see one of these as really pushing growth of the market?
For me, what is driving growth in the market is the adoption of technology, not all these things.
Okay.
So if the customers are educated, they have the knowledge and they have the experience, then they move forward. It's not really about the technology that they are. So the technology is there. The growth comes from the adoption of technology, not doesn't come from new technology. So okay, we're talking about automated truck loading. But do you know how many industries are lacking AGVs? So what's the so if you have a look at the total numbers, how many forklifts in the market, how many AGVs in the market, and we are right now thinking about automated truck loading. For me, I mean,
I guess it comes back to your earlier point, especially for to increase that adoption and have success, start with projects that are not crazy at the bleeding edge of my project one. I'm going to load trucks half outside using 5 different brands of AGV. Probably not the best place to start. Does
not
that
the
make
best place. No, 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 no. I will say that you have to start small and then think big. It's good to think big, but to start small. And before you reach the automated truck loading, it's going to take
Mhm.
you.
Gotcha.
I mean, there are some companies ready for automated truck loading, but that would be a different story.
Okay. Let me just say to everyone listening, we're about 5 minutes away from Q&A. So if you have any bubbling questions away, pop those in the Q&A box, and I'll throw one last one at you, Javier, just before we get into that. Let me see. The question I was the most curious about is, if you think about the most successful problem-free mobile robot projects that you've seen, maybe you worked on directly or you've seen, secondhand. When you think about that, could you help us understand what kind of project that was and why it worked? Like, what did they do right?
The most successful projects are the ones that you can repeat, that you can copy and paste. Particularly the most common ones: automotive industry, supply from the supermarket to the assembly line. You can find them all around. Those projects have been really successful. And you will copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. It's always the same thing. Maybe the layout changes a little bit, but it's always the same kind of trolley. You are always dropping and picking up in the same way. So it's copy and paste. So particularly when we're working with corporations, I always say, okay, if you have many plants, think about a solution that fits all the plants, no matter what you do. So you can copy and paste, because when you validate in one plant, then you can bring to the others. So if you repeat the project, then you're successful. Automotive industry, and then e-commerce. The usual Kiva system project, the usual Amazon one. Those are all copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. That's the success. The Amazon success comes from copy paste, copy paste.
I see. And just finally, still on this question of what makes a successful project, to have that first successful project, do you see that in terms of processes and the types of vehicles needed to do those processes, do you think there's more chance of a successful project with a certain category of robot, like a mouse style underride under a trolley or a forked AGV? Do you see any difference there in terms of how complicated or easy they make a project?
Oh, well, that's a really good question, Matt. I would say no. Because you can find very difficult projects with mouse, with platform, with forklift. So it's not really linked to the type of mobile robot. I think for me, it's linked to the design of the process and the design of the project. Then you have some projects which are, from a design point of view, really complicated, and ones are really simple. So with a forklift mobile robot, you can have from point A to point B. It's really easy. Make the good design, works. You can have extremely complicated projects with forklift mobile robots, with 50 or 100 forklift mobile robots, many stations, many crazy environment. So it's not really linked to the type of mobile robot, I think.
Okay, good to know. So let's I can see 3 questions here. So let's go through these. If anyone has any more, pop them in. We'll get through them. Let's start with this question from Paul, who says, I think we've covered this a little bit, but we'll ask it in this way. What are the main challenges holding back adoption today at an end user level?
Lack of education, lack of consultants, I would say. So we cannot reach all the customers, I guess. I think it's that customer need to educate themselves, and customers need consultants. Just that clear. Absolutely. And knowledge and experience come typically from consultants. If you don't have someone with knowledge and experience in your team, that's how you can do it.
And just on that point, is the consultant, like, take your organization as an example, Moving Robots. Are you basically let's say a partner, a service provider, over and above what might be a system integrator? So you guys are not installing the end customer's robots for them. You're not doing the integration job. It's purely an advisory capacity.
That's the thing. We are not linked to any integrator, and we don't do integrations at all. But we help them. We help customers in designing the project and we help customers in guaranteeing that the integration is going to work well. We always say that if you come to a short list of 3 vendors and you think that the 3 of them will make your project without any issues, then you have done your things correctly. Yeah, you have done your things in a good way.
Perfect. Let's go to this question here from Jack. A little bit more of a geographic kind of markets question. Which countries, so geographical markets or industries, are there any that you see particularly driving growth in mobile robotics the most? Like what's going to have the biggest impact, either industries or particular markets?
So right now we see logistics growing a lot, and I think that airports for sure. I don't know in how many years. I don't know if 3, 5, or 10 or 8 or whatever. But airports are going to be a huge market coming soon.
Okay.
Well, coming soon. I mean, a huge market coming. I don't know soon or later, but yeah, sure.
I know at Bluebotics we had one of our Spanish customers involved in trials of automatic moving of baggage, right, from terminal buildings to I think they call it the apron where the planes are.
The airplane, yeah.
Is that what you're thinking of, or
That's part
are
of
there
the
other?
thing. That's part of, actually, I have participated in that project. Yeah, sure, that's part of the thing, the outdoor, but then you have the indoor as well. Right now, we are participating in a project in Denmark, which is indoor, and it's about cargo. So don't think only about luggage or moving packages from point A to point B, but think about many other things. In an airport, you have so many logistics, so much logistics. So sure.
I see. A question here from Christian. How important is the charging strategy for recharging those AGV batteries? And it's kind of 3-part question. How important is it? Is opportunity charging usually the best strategy? And maybe we can define that. Or would dynamic charging improve the operation more?
So the importance of charging has changed a lot during the last 5 to 10 years because of lithium. And I have to say that right now the impact of charging is really low. It's about 10% of the total operation. So it's not like the impact is really high. So, I mean, it was answering the question, it was more important in the past than it is right now. Second thing, regarding the opportunity charging is the right strategy, I would say yes, in 90% of the cases. In some cases, battery swapping is a good idea, but very few. But it still happens that it is a good idea to exchange the batteries and keep the mobile robot running for more than 99% of the time. And when it comes to dynamic charging, I guess that Christian means that the vehicle is driving and charging at the same time while driving.
That was my guess too.
Yeah, I guess he means that. That can be interesting for some automotive applications, but generally speaking, is not really interesting because you need to deploy something. You need some cyber works, and that's kind of expensive to install all that charging system. So it's quite expensive. Again, for automotive industry, for assembly line applications, it may be interesting, but generally speaking, it's not.
I see. I think so. The last question I see here that I can throw your way is an ROI question. I think this is mainly aimed at the end customer, but I guess it's relevant to both those supplier as well. I'm sure this will include some of the points we've already touched upon, but what do you see as the main short list of factors that are going to, optimize for ROI, right? So how can an end customer, an installation, how can they approach that and optimize that to have the quickest or the highest ROI on the project?
From an end user point of view, from a customer point of view. There's one thing that I think it's really important. So when you automate, you have to change your process. You have to change how you work. First example that I always use, the Roomba at home. So the Roomba cannot clean if the door is not open. So if you don't leave all doors open, the Roomba is not gonna clean the house. So when we are cleaning with sweep and so on, it's completely different. You can open all the doors, right? So you have to change the mindset, and you have to change the philosophy, and you have to change the process. If you want to automate without changing the process, that is much more expensive than if you change the process. Imagine what would be to have a humanoid at home taking a sweep and sweeping. That would be extremely expensive. That we don't have that at home. What we have at home is a Roomba. So if you want to get a good ROI, it's important that you adapt your process to automation, not adapting the automation to your process.
I see. I guess with the prices of some AGVs, AMR's been, can run for let's say an automated forklift system can run to 200,000-300,000 euros or dollars. Potentially, that could have a big impact if the number of vehicles is not correct. So, how can the vehicle producer or the end user kind of know that? How can they be sure that actually, yes, it is 10 AGVs that I need and not 8?
Again, you have to hire a consultant. It's very difficult for an end user to know that. So mostly it comes either from the consultant or from the vendor.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that. But that is completely linked to the ROI for sure. And it's very difficult for an end user to know that, unless they have experience and they know what they are talking about. But that's rare.
Yeah, I see. How does here's a question about maintenance. Like what let's say what percentage or what proportion would you imagine of the value of an AGV would an end user need to spend in terms of maintaining that system on a yearly basis? Is that equivalent to a manual forklift, or is it very different?
No, it's well, when it comes to the preventive maintenance, it's much lower. And when it comes to the corrective maintenance, typically it is higher, depending on the number of forklift drivers you have, much higher. But on the other hand, that's on one hand. On the other hand, the lifetime of an AGV or AMR is typically much higher than a manual forklift. Much higher. I have seen AGVs working for 20 years. They keep on working.
Right.
Interesting. And we have some other question here, Matt.
Yep. We have Tom. Is AI going to accelerate adoption of mobile robotics, and if so, when?
The answer is yes, it is. How? I think the AI will have a huge impact in the installation phase. So today it takes a lot of time to install a mobile robot, or at least that's the customer point of view. So it takes a lot of time. But I think that will be that time will be going down really fast with AI for sure. Even we'll be reaching a point that the mobile robots will be able to install themselves. When it's starting right now already, I think in a couple of years we'll see a huge impact. And when are they going to install themselves? I don't know. That's maybe 10, 15, 20 years. I don't know. I'm not sure about that number.
I see. I'm conscious of time, so let's make this one the final one before we wrap up. A question from Brian. How are you seeing technical knowledge move from integrator and OEM to the end users? So we mentioned before the example of an end user needing to change the virtual paths, for example, that the AGVs follow. Brian's saying, are end users looking to take on more of that work, like simulating the project or optimizing the processes? Are you seeing any shift there?
In automotive industry, for sure. In the rest of industries, I wouldn't say so. No, I don't see really the end user is willing to play a role there. No.
Okay.
I think that by now there's not enough skilled people in the market, skilled people on the end user side, so that they can bring all those things to the side. And I'm gonna place a fast example when it comes to robotic arms. How is this working? Do really end users play a role there or not? So if the answer is yes, okay, it would be the same thing for mobile robotics in the future, but I don't think so.
I see.
With some exceptions, like automotive industry.
Gotcha. Okay, let me throw you kind of one last kind of chance to summarize. Like if the people watching this now or later have that chance to kind of have a takeaway thought really on how to think about mobile robotics and making that successful, either a vehicle maker level or an end customer level, like what's the main theme you would like them to walk away with?
Availability, service, stability. Always.
Perfect.
I
That's
keep on telling that, and people keep doing things which are strange. I don't know. Making strange things in the market. Yeah, that's why we see so many companies dealing with bankruptcy and so many people losing money, and big bubbles as well.
I see. Perfect. It's a nice summary. It brings us back to the beginning. So
Yeah, exactly. Always, I keep on saying the same thing. So after 45 minutes or 1 hour,
Javier, thank you so much for your time. We'll wrap it up there. I'll just remind everyone attending that there are obviously way more sessions you can attend. So just jump back into the lobby to get into those. And thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Okay. Have a nice day, and thank you very much.